Welcome back, my dear students. So in this lecture, we are going to be doing something a little bit different. What I had in mind was to show you more ways of creating HTTP requests. Now, the other ways that I want to show you about creating HTTP requests require us to download third-party libraries, and we're not to that point yet. So I want to take you step by step and build on that knowledge. So we are going to jump into the next lecture here or this lecture by showing you how to create a web server. Once I show you how to create everything like core, using core modules, then we jump into third-party libraries. Okay, deal? Let's get to it. So what I want to do is create a server. Now you might, if you come from PHP from my other courses, this is just going to kind of take you to another path. We're used to seeing Apache handling all our requests, and we are used to seeing this done automatically for us when we are, coding in, let's say, PHP. Now, with Node, or should I say JavaScript, right? We have to create our own servers. Now, this might sound like an overwhelming task, but I can assure you that it's super easy to do. So we can create our own servers using a built-in module. We're going to continue that path until things become too hard, and then we do it with third-party modules. But right now, let's create a server. Let me show you how this works. So we're going to require this module HTTP, and we can of course require HTTPS if we wanted to have our server secure. Now, the issue with that is that you need to have some type of certificate to use in your server. We don't have one here. Most of the time, you're going to have to purchase it. The same thing as having it with a certificate. Okay, it doesn't really affect the lecture much. So let's continue with this. So the way we do this, the way we create servers is by bringing in the HTTP module. Okay, then we invoke a function or set up some type of listener for requests, right, to our application. And our application is going to be hosted, let's say, on the web somewhere. And every time somebody makes a request to that domain, to that URL, our application is going to react. And in this case, we're doing everything in development. So our location would be probably like localhost, right? Because that's the location of our server, right? Our default environment. So we are going to create this variable to hold some information here. We are going to be using the module, and there is this built-in function here called create server. This is where we place this listener. This function is going to get invoked every time there is a request. We invoke this function, and then everything else comes back to us. Like, for example, now when I say everything else, I mean we get a callback function to us that we can then use to do other things. For example, in this create server, there is this callback function inside, and I could write it like this if I want to, remember that. Or I could just take this off in the new syntax for ES6. So we're gonna get two objects back to us. The first object is the request object, and the request object is the request that's being sent to our server. That's the request that has been sent, and we grab it, and then we can do things with it. And the same thing with the response. But since the request object, okay, has data that could have data being sent to us, we also need to do things with it. But right now we don't need to do anything with it because that request, for example, has to be set up in the other side. Like if I'm creating an application that's going to request some type of information, remember that we went here and we go ahead and set that up in this side, right? So in this case, we're gonna go get data. But if we wanted to send data, then we would just post. We would send a post request, okay? And then we set everything else inside. Now, let's go back here. This request object can have a lot of data, and let me show you some of the data that it can have, because I want you to be aware of it. Okay. So I have Google here, and if you go to Google and just refresh, and you go to the network tab on your browser, you see that Google gets some get requests. We got a get request from Google here. All right, we're pulling information, and we see that we get a status code. You're gonna see this a lot. It's a get request because we're going to the Google server, and this is basically the response headers. Look at that. That's the data. Okay, it's saying it's taking HTML. That's why you see the page. You see some stuff here. Okay, the character set is UTF. It means that it has a lot of different uh, characters inside to detect many different languages. He has a lot of information. He has cookie information. I mean, you name it, is here. And then it has information about our system. It has it says that it's using Firefox, Mozilla here. I'm using a Macintosh. So there's a lot of information in that request header. Okay. So here, the request header already has predefined information when you're sending it from this side, right? When you're sending that request or trying to get some. But the response object, okay, it's something that we need to fill in. We need to create what type of response we want. In this case, we use a function called write head, okay, to write to the header. And we're gonna send a status code of 200 because we want the response to be good to the user, right? If they send a request to our server, we're gonna send, hey, listen, everything is okay. That's the status code. Everything is okay. There are some, we actually, when we write application, sometimes we detect for the status codes to be 200. If the status code is 200, then we go ahead and create and do other things with our application. We see that a lot in Ajax. So the second parameter here of this function is what we want. In this case, we want to write something to the header. We want to set something to the header. This is pre-built text inside our header server definition. So content type, I'm not making this up. This is all is uppercase here, hyphen, and uppercase here. Okay, this would be the key of that object, and I want it to be text, and it's gonna be plain. Now the response I'm sending it, I'm gonna end the response with some text here. I'm gonna say, hi guys, it's Edwin Diaz. Yeah, there we go. Now, in order for us to finish this, we need to end it by listening to requests in some type of port. Because right now we are listening nowhere. So let's use that variable that we have here, okay, that we created, and let's listen to anything that comes to, let's say, port 9000 or 9100. Now, usually you're going to see people putting 3000. They are not going to put 3000 just because I know that I'm using something in my computer in that port. So I'm just going to put 9111. Now look what happens when I execute this file, server, enter. You see that this cursor is blinking here. That's because it means that our server is actually running. So if I go to here and I type in 9111, enter, you can see that our response is there. Okay, and if you go to the top here, you see the status code here, our remote address here, text plain, and you can see some of the information on my computer down here, which is great. So let's go back here real quick, and let's just make sure that we see that our server is running. We could do this by doing a log and writing something here. Our server is running. Okay, let's come back here. And if you want to see the changes here, you're gonna have to cancel your server. You're gonna have to turn it off. Basically, restart it. So Control C and then up again for the next command, the previous command, enter again, and now you can see that it says our server is running. If you want changes to take effect, you need to turn this off all the time. Okay, now there are modules, third-party library modules that we can install later on to do this automatically for us. So every time we make a change, it will detect that we're making a change and will restart our servers. But we're not up there yet. We're not up to that lesson yet. Okay, so now if I wanted to send HTML here, I just do HTML. Let's do some HTML tags here, and let's restart our server again. And I have this here. I always forget. I'll do that in the next tab. Refresh, and now you can see that we see those HTML tags. Let's make this a little bigger here. See that? Now our browser, our application is now really reading this. When we send it back, our browser is like, okay, you just want to display text. We know that, so we're gonna display text for you. Okay, that's not really what I want, right? So I'm gonna tell this in the header that I want HTML. That our text is going to be HTML. I'm gonna restart the server. Come back again. Refresh. And now you see that it's actually reading HTML. And if you check this, you can see the HTML here. Okay? See that? So that's it for this lecture. I don't want to go, and by the way, guys, you can make this whatever port you want as long as you're not using it in your server. Okay? Make sure that you're not using it. There is a command to actually find out what type of, if you are using one of these, and you got to just type it for your operating system. And if you go here and you say what request is in this port, and this is just to give an explanation, or find open ports Mac. Okay, then you'll go here somewhere and you'll find some type of command here. Okay, so depending on your operating system, you might want to do something like this to try to find out what is happening in your computer. And I do that all the time. Okay, and I actually have a shortcut, but I'm not going to go into details. I have an alias for that because it's an inconvenience to be writing this all the time. Okay, so once you type this into your computer, you will start seeing the type of ports that are open. Okay, and it will tell you. Okay, and it's using the netstat command here. You see some of my ports and localhosts are open, as you can see that. Okay, but anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. Let's continue with the next lectures on this HTTP section. Let's learn some more stuff. Keep it up, and I'll see you in the next lectures.